Yes. Okay. Sorry, here he is.
Hello.
Oh, my goodness. I can't believe I'm talking to you.
You might as well believe it.
Oh, my. Dr. Spitz, you're like one of my heroes of all time.
I'm glad of that.
Because of Cathy, but I have watched every single case that's been televised with you. And I think you're you're like God to me. You're the God of crime.
Thank you very much. Let's answer your questions.
First question was, what are the responsibilities of a medical examiner?
The medical examiner is an appointed position in most states, is an appointed position by a county or a city or a state. And it requires that the medical examiner answer the cause of death, the manner of death, and how an injury occurred, if there is an injury. The cause of death is simple. The manner of death means whether the death was by suicide, natural cause, or accident. And that's an opinion, of course.
Right.
And to make it possible to answer as many as possible cases as come before the medical examiner, they give you an out in case you don't know, or in case you cannot, for whatever reason, make that determination. So therefore, there's a manner of death even a cause of death can be unknown or undeterminable.
Okay. So when you were the medical examiner here in Maryland, was it for Baltimore?
No, I was not the medical examiner. I was the deputy chief medical examiner. From Maryland, I went to Michigan in 1971, or in 1972, I think it was. Then I came to Detroit, to Wayne County, and here I was the chief medical examiner.
What's the difference between the deputy chief, and the medical examiner?
There is really no difference. The chief runs the office administratively, and in general, he is where the buck stops. That's where the buck stops.
Okay.
He's where the buck stops of Mr. Truman.
So did you handle cases for Baltimore City or the whole state?
For the whole state.
Okay.
Maryland, it's a state system, and the office of the medical examiner comes under the state of Maryland.
Okay. So in order to be a medical examiner, what kind of training is required for you?
The training is that such person, if he has got the qualifications, I'm not sure that in every location they have all the qualifications, but let's say the medical examiner has all the qualifications. Then he is a medical doctor. He could be a DO, but normally he's an MD. He has had 4 years at least of work as a pathologist in a hospital that is accredited for such training by the American Board of Pathology. Then he takes another year in an institution where he can get forensic training, like a medical examiner's office or a coroner's office, and where somebody will train him, will teach him. Unfortunately, medical schools do not address forensic pathology in the curriculum.
So do you remember how old you were when you were the medical examiner here in Maryland?
In Maryland, I came to Maryland in 1951. In 1959. I came to Maryland. How old I was born in the wonderful year of 1926. Can you imagine how old I am now?
About 29.
20 now? I'm 29? Yeah, that would be nice. But right. I'm 93. I'm 93 and I'm still working.
I think that's amazing. Shane is on the call with me. I just didn't want you to think it was just me, but I'm so excited to talk to you. I can't stand it. We know that you did Sister Cathy's autopsy.
Yes, I did. And I did that couple of years before I came to
Right.
Michigan, I did this autopsy. That's correct.
Now, do you also visit the crime scene before a body is removed?
No, but I did see pictures. I have received pictures. I saw the pictures in the back of an old brick building, and I think there was a brick factory there, something like that. There were a lot of bricks strewn around in the yard. She was there in the wintertime, in January, I think it wasn't it, and in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Because she was really not dressed for the weather. It was snowing, and she was not undressed, but her shirt was pulled up above her waist or above the thighs, and the shirt was also in disarray.
Right.
The picture shows nasty pictures with a young woman. It was obvious that it was a sexually motivated murder.
I was going to ask you that. I've seen the pictures of Cathy's head wounds. One of the pictures, you commented that in spite of a skull fracture, there would not have been a lot of blood. Can you explain that?
No, there was not a lot of blood. You know what I did, actually? I was amazed by that. And that there was not any blood that I could. When blood dries, it stays.
Right.
It congeals, it clots, and it makes like a flaky type of a coating on stuff that it dropped on. And so my opinion was, by the way, somewhere is a picture of a skull of a man that worked on the building being built, a construction worker that did not wear a hard hat, and a brick when he was on the ground level on the street next to the building which was being built for the University of Maryland Hospital, and a brick fell from the 12th or 13th floor on his head and killed him. It hit with a corner of the brick, and the corner was a fracture in his head, looked like if you go to a very quiet body of water and you throw a stone into the water, it makes like a ripple. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
You throw a rock into the water and it makes fractures like ripples all the way around. And interestingly, the same exact pattern occurs when a pedestrian is hit by an automobile and the head hits the windshield. It looks exactly like the pattern of the fracture of a rock falling on the water on a quiet water, and drop a pebble on it, a rock on it, and it causes that ripple, just exactly like the picture where that construction worker had lost his life. The bottom part of that fracture is depressed, is the lowest point of the picture. The lowest point of the fracture is the little area, the tiny little area where the corner of the brick hit the bone, the head of the top of the head. And in that little tiny area, in the very bottom of the fracture, is cement, because bricks are made of cement or water or something like that. And there was sand from that dried little piece of brick that was broken off and stayed in the fracture. And around this were increasing diameter-wise ripples all the way to the outermost, and there's like 6 or 7 or 8 of those fractures, ripples all the way around. And the sister that died in the yard in that outside of that building in the suburban Baltimore, was just exactly like originally. It was just exactly like the fracture in the head of that construction worker. But when the body decomposed with time, because she was out there for a while, the pieces of bone in that ripple pattern fell into the skull. Can you imagine how that happened? The soft tissues, the skin and whatever it was that was on her body, the bone fell into the skull because when the head was handled and that's all of this, all types of movement maybe even caused the fracture to drop into the interior of the skull. So that when I got the body, the pieces were largely in the inside. And what those pieces that were not became dislodged by bringing the body to the medical examiner's office.
There could be a head fracture, but the skin would not have to be broken. It could still fracture underneath.
When you look at the fracture of the construction worker, you will see that those fractures are actually loose. Once the soft tissues on the inside that hold the bone many times, but in this case, they decomposed as well. So eventually those bone pieces, fell into the interior. And that's where they were recovered from. I could have taken them out and rearranged them and glued them back, but I didn't do that.
We have heard that 2 men who were possibly the perpetrators returned home that night covered in blood. How would we explain that?
There could have been no bleeding to the outside. There would have been bleeding to the inside because the pieces of bone were all pushed inward. And it could have been that she continued breathing for a while. And because the heart has its own plant that causes it to beat. And she would have continued breathing for a number of minutes and spewed blood droplets all over, big droplets. Right. And if the body was handled, there might have even been blood coming out of the nose, coming out of the mouth, in the process of breathing. The actual impact may not have made a hole, because I tried that. I tried that on human skin, on another skull, on a skull with skin, and hit it with the corner of a brick, and there was no penetration, because the skin is elastic, and it goes with the blow.
Okay.
You said, I don't remember if I put down anything about, did I examine the neck and throat that there was a fracture of the hyoid bone?
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
There's every chance that she was stranded as well.
Okay, so the crown, the horn of one of the hyoid bone, one of them was broken off. Right.
The hyoid bone is a thin bone, not very steady, not very strong. It's thin, and especially the horn. It's got 2 horns there, so one on each side. So when the neck is handled, when the neck is grabbed, when the neck is compressed, and when the person is strangled, many times there is a fracture of the hyoid bone, of the horn of the hyoid bone, and one of them, sometimes both. And when that is involved with a subsequent death or during strangulation, the person dies eventually. If the strangulation by hand or with a noose, if the person is the breathing that continues and the heartbeat that continues make them spew blood. Why? Because the death is an asphyxial death. and meaning that from lack of oxygen, from lack of air to breathe. And consequent, blood is spewed with each breath that is taken. And the person, I have seen that so many times, a person is strangled, lies near a wall on the floor, okay? And there was a case in I don't know, Maryland or Virginia, where a woman was raped by a sailor, or suspected of having been raped by a sailor, was the Norfolk Four. That was the name of the case. And she lay near the wall, and the wall was covered in a large amount of blood from her lying there breathing after she was dead.
So is the strangulation usually first? And would that make someone unconscious? And then
that could be. That could be.
Which is likely to happen first?
That could be that she was killed actually by strangulation, and that the hit on the head was subsequent. So if it was subsequent, there would have been still bleeding. There would have been still bleeding to the inside or bleeding outward by breathing, and handling the body would have caused blood, or turning the body. Anyway, the handling the body would have caused blood on the individual that handled her.
So if someone was strangled to the point where the horn is broken, would that render them unconscious?
That could cause them to be unconscious, or could cause death.
Okay.
The death would occur primarily either by pushing on the airway, or it could occur from pressure on both carotid arteries, because the carotid arteries are the ones that bring by far most of the blood into the brain. And the brain needs a lot of oxygen.
Dr. Spitz, there's a picture of Cathy's head wound with a measurement, a diameter it's very round, and it's about an inch. And I'm wondering, what are some objects that could make a wound like that?
I think she was killed with a corner of a brick.
Could other things have made that kind of round?
Something with a corner. Something with a sharp corner. There's also a mention, I think, on a case that occurred here in Detroit, where there's a big hospital here called Beaumont, and there was a nurse there that worked till midnight, and then she went home. And when she came towards her car on the parking lot, her husband waited for her, and I don't know, because of jealousy or because of what, I don't remember, but he hit her on the head with what? I can't hear. Oh, she tried. Diane tells me she tried to divorce him. So anyway, whatever. People do strange things. So anyway, and you can probably find it on the internet as well. The case name is Kado, Kado.
Okay.
He's in jail. And unless they let him out, this was many years ago. He went and bought an instrument. The police didn't know what killed her, and I told him she was killed by metal object with a corner. The reason I knew it was metal is because there was black in the bottom. Where the point is, at the very bottom, there was black, greasy material. Greasy material, we have fat all over our body. So when she was hit with the object, she broke the bone, a round bone with a ripple, and at the bottom is a point, and there was black grease down there. Let me not ask you that, but anybody who carries a gun and cleans the gun, they clean the gun with a rope, with a string or rope that has at the end a piece of cloth. And they pull the cloth through the barrel on the string. And after a few times that you do that, the string has oil on it from the tissue that it goes through, and the oil mixes with whatever little fragments, there are tiny fragments of lead, and those are inside of the barrel. And when that comes out when you pull it out through the barrel, the cloth is black. And the same happened here. And I told that to the police, and they went to the house. They looked all over the place, and they found on the kitchen counter, they found a receipt, but no fireplace in the house. And the reason I'm saying that is because what was bought with that receipt was a wood splitting wedge. Now, the wood splitting wedge has a corner if you hold it at an angle.
Right. So whatever could Kathy have been hit, it didn't look to you. I have a copy of the autopsy, but it didn't look to you like it was metal because there would have been no grease on it. Could it have been?
No, Cato had grease on it.
Okay.
Because he bought a wedge, but she was not hit with a metal object. She was hit with a brick.
Are you okay? What else could make the same kind of wound?
Anything that can make a corner.
Okay.
That has a corner. You can do it. You can probably do it with a heavy object that will break the skull. Because skulls are not easy to break. But that portion of the skull where he was is very thin. In fact, it is not much thicker than paper.
It's right above her ear. Correct?
Yes, that's where the temple is.
Right.
That's the thinnest bone. That's probably one of the thinnest bones in the body.
Dr. Spitz, what would the kind of wounds that Kathy had tell you about the perpetrator?
Well, it was a sexually motivated crime. It was a sexually motivated crime that led them to rape her, I suspect, because why else would these clothes be in disarray and skirt pulled up and the skirt pulled up? And that's what happens in many of these sexually motivated crimes.
So could the perpetrator have left her that way purposely?
No, I doubt that. Because that's what she died. That's what she died of. She either died. I could not determine because the organs were all gone. They are maybe not gone, but at least unexaminable because this was not a fresh body.
You also, about a year after that, did the autopsy in Maryland on a young woman named Montagna, and she was murdered. She was hit in the head with a cinder block, and she was left face down with her beautiful hair spread out and a lot of cigarette burns. What would that tell you about the person?
Yeah, cigarette burns, and that documented that they were cigarette burns, and that was a case of torture.
Okay, and the cinder block, she was hit in the face with the cinder block, but she was left face down. And she had long, beautiful blonde hair, which was spread out around her head. The police think that perhaps the two crimes are connected. Do you remember Grace Montagna?
I don't remember that at all.
Okay.
And did I do that autopsy?
Yeah. She was found in the Mount Auburn Cemetery on the other side.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
Okay. And she was near a brick factory, actually.
The fact that she was turned face down is a frequent observation in sexually motivated crimes because they kill the girl, and then they turn her over because they cannot look her in the face.
How many autopsies do you think you've done in your life?
I have either done or supervised 62, what is it, Diane? 65,000 autopsies.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but it contains, that number contains, because all the offices where I've ever worked, and that means really two, because I worked in Baltimore as deputy chief and in Maryland, and then I came to Michigan and I worked in Detroit. But in Detroit, I worked for the county of Wayne, which is Detroit, and also in another county next door called the county of Macomb. That's Macomb. In those two counties, and in Detroit, in Maryland, they were both places where the American Board of Pathology gave us authority to train people pathologists who wanted to be forensic pathologists. So they would do autopsies and show me the autopsies and discuss those autopsies with me, and we would examine the body together right there in the autopsy room. And so if I put all these cases together, it comes to approximately $65,000.
What's the typical day like for you now?
Now I don't do many autopsies. Now I do maybe, if I do a lot of autopsies, now I do about 75 a year.
And then you spend a lot of time doing presentations and...
I do a lot of other work, yes. I do a lot of other work. Everything within the realm of forensic pathology, but not a lot of autopsies. And I miss it, I can tell you that, but that's how it is.
Right. Dr. Spitz, I don't know if you're aware, but today is the 50th anniversary of the day that Sister Cathy disappeared.
Really?
Yeah, November 7th.
Day is the very day.
Yes, November 7th,
Wow.
1969.
Yeah.
So we're having candles lit tonight for her all over the world.
Really?
Yes. So I want to thank
Wow.
you. I do have one more question. Do you think Sister Cathy was killed by somebody who knew her?
It almost looked that way.
And
It almost looked that way. But how can you really tell? The body was moved. That's my recollection. The
Correct.
body was moved. Could it not also be that here is a girl walking somewhere and somebody grabbed her and put her in a car and stuff like that? Could it not be also? The way I reason is I'm not the only one that makes decisions. We have to very seriously take the knowledge that we gain from the police investigation. And the police, when they do a good investigation, it is magnificent and gives a lot of information. And the police knows more than I do. I know what relates to the body. They know what relates to everything else.
an interesting comment.